Well, good morning. I hope you're having a great start to your day and that yesterday turned out well. I hope that you watched the video yesterday where I talked quite a bit about the common denominator in every single one of your problems and every single one of your successes. If you haven't, definitely suggest you watch it. And there's just so much that you can get out of it, and it really will actually make today's video come to life even more. Yesterday's video, I ended with a promise that today I would actually talk about how you can analyze yourself to make sure that you get the outcomes that you desire. And we're all so unique, so it's not like a cookie cutter thing that you can do and say do these 5 specific things, whereas it's more of an exploration. And it's a really cool exploration because the exploration itself is very cookie cutter, and it's very unique to you and what is important to you. A lot of times when we learn things and we're taught things that are made that is supposed to be like everybody's the same and everybody's supposed to conform and everybody's supposed to do it this way and that's the right way, the one and only way of doing it. But that's so far removed from really how we should be looking at things, because we are all so incredibly unique. And if you don't believe it, look in the mirror, because you don't really look a whole lot more like anybody else, except for maybe some family members, and every once in a while someone will be like, hey, I ran into your doppelganger. If that's the way you look on the outside, just imagine how different you feel or you perceive things on the inside. It's going to be equally as unique. How you process information is going to be equally as unique. And most importantly, what is actually important to you and what you're here to do, your life's purpose, is going to be unique. So that's one thing you really got to recognize, is that it's going to be unique. Like, you don't have to be like everybody else. You don't want to be conforming. The people that conform end up in the same place. They all end up in the same place. They all end up in that 54% of people at the end of their lifetime they don't have wealth, they're not financially independent, they don't necessarily have people around them, and people have to take care of them. And that's over 54% of the population gets into that situation at the age of 60. And it's because they're all doing the same thing, right? So how do you get into that top 5% of the population that's completely free and feel successful? Well, for starters, you've got to analyze yourself. You've got to analyze yourself and really look at what you desire and understand yourself. Know thyself, so that you can actually make those decisions so you can live a life that you feel fulfilled and successful. So let's just define success real quick, because there's so many different ways of looking at success. But the reality is, success is when you actually achieve a set upon goal or a specific outcome, or you actually get something that you've been working towards, that you've actually picked, right? So success is not like being born into like a rich family that just hands you everything. Like, that's not successful. That person hasn't attained success, even though they have all the financial wealth. You know, they might even have arranged marriages and they get love, right? So they're married and they have wealth and whatever else that comes along with it. If it's given to you, it's not really success. That's a gift. So success is really when you can actually set upon a target in some way and hit that target, whether it's you could be doing archery or shooting. Like, if you hit bullseye or darts, that was a successful throw if that's what you were going for. So it's actually setting an aim that you have that means something to you and focusing on that and getting to it. So that success can be different for everybody. Some people, they will be feeling successful because they've actually been able to clean the nicest bathroom and make it a nice place for people to be able to use. Some people, that is the biggest success. Then you've got people that want to get us to Mars, that want to make autonomous vehicles, that want to make the best app for the iPhone that saves people time, that want to make the best search engine. There's these huge ones that seem enormous. And then there's things like, I just want to be the best painter, or I just want to be the best masonry, or I just want to be the best carpenter. And all of them are great, because if you're doing it and it has passion to you, and it feels good when you're doing it, then you should be doing it. You don't have to be successful in other people's eyes. You have to be successful in your eyes. You're the person you have to answer to all the time. So a common question that's asked to me is, how many of those targets should I pursue at once? And the real answer that I like to give is as few as possible. Just like if you are throwing darts, if you're thinking about what you need to be doing at work, your dart throwing or shooting or archery or whatever you're working on right in that moment is not going to be nearly as good because you're thinking about too many things at once. However, there's certain categories of your life that you want to take a look at. And this is where you really get to analyze yourself and see your satisfaction level with the current situation, and easily start to set some goals about how you can improve certain areas and actually get on path so that there's a target when you're focusing on any one of these areas. So you really want to make sure that you focus on as few goals as possible, but if you're going to focus on more than one, you really don't want to focus on more than actually one per category of your life. And I like to bucket them into as few categories as possible and call it 5 categories, which is your health, your spirituality, your financial situation, your relationships, and any kind of personal skills development. So those are the 5 that I like to use. Obviously, relationships could be broken down into several different categories, right? It could be your business relationships, personal relationships, friendships, intimate relationships, and family relationships. And I'm sure you could even come up with more than that. But really, you want to focus it down to a grouping that's manageable, because otherwise it'll be very overwhelming. So that's why I like to use the 5. So if you were to take those 5, health, spiritual, financial, relationships, and personal development, and you were to rank them each, give them each of like 1 to 10, and if you got a pen and paper and you can do this now, it's going to take you 3 minutes to get you on track. So maybe 5. Figure out what those numbers are on a scale from 1 to 10. And if you don't have a pen and paper, do it in your head if you need to. Before I go on, want to talk about a little bit micro goals, because what ends up happening is when you have this large goal that you want to achieve, you often end up achieving very small goals within that. So, for example, if you want to climb Mount Everest, you start not by, I'm going to climb Mount Everest. Yeah, yes, you know that's your end goal. But the first goal when you start walking up Mount Everest is to get to base camp, to get to the very first camp where you actually will spend a night and get acclimated to the altitude, get situated, make sure everybody's healthy, make sure you guys have all your supplies, and everybody's going to be capable for the next summit to reach. Not the tippy top, but the next base camp, right? Or the next campsite. So then there's several of these going through it. And that's the same way with life. Like before you get to that final goal, you're going to be getting to these different benchmarks and these different places that are a stopping point for you to reflect and make sure, hey, I'm going the right path. There's and climbing a mountain, you got to make sure the weather's good. There's so many variables to make sure that you're going to be able to get there. Same thing with life is you get to stop and assess your situation at these micro goals, these micro spots where it's like, okay, I've got this piece of it down. So realize that when you're obtaining that big goal, setting these smaller goals as benchmarks give you that nice reassurance, a boost, helps build your belief level. So think about that. If you want to build a company, if that's your thing, you want to build a $100 million company, you got to start with $1, right? You got to start by making $1 profitability. And that might be your first micro goal, or it might be creating the product, or it might be patenting the product, designing the product, or it might actually having a physical one in hand, or selling your first one. You get to decide. Each one of these steps is a huge milestone. And a lot of times when we're focused on a $100 million company, we don't think about the little milestones that we accomplish along the way. So make sure that you pat yourself on the back and stop and realize how far you've come. And I know you've already come far in your life. Like where you were 10 years ago, I guarantee is a better place than you are. Now is a better place than you were 10 years ago. So really remember that and maybe keep track of that stuff, because it helps motivate you as you make progress in anything that you do. So let's look at these areas. And what I like to do is there's a wheel that I create. So I'm going to turn the camera on, and so here's the wheel, right? And what ends up happening is if you were a 10 in one area, and I'm just going to do this for exercise sake, but you know, at the end of the day, there's probably never a 10 because then you're looking for perfection, which is kind of an illusion. But let's call it that my health is a 10, right? And I feel pretty good about my health. So, but it's definitely not 10. But let's call it a 10, right? And you fill this in, and you have it completely filled in for a 10. Maybe my spiritual is about a 5, right? And my financial is a 6, and my personal development is a 1. And then the relationship is maybe call it a 3 or something like that, right? Well, what ends up happening is you have a very lopsided wheel. So if you didn't have this outer perimeter, what would happen if you were trying to be on a balance of life? It'd be a really freaking bumpy ride when this thing starts rolling. So this is one approach, is looking at this stuff and looking at these categories and saying, okay, I want to get everything to where my health is. And if the health was only an 8, then you'd want to try to get everything to an 8. And that's one approach that people like to look at and say, this is a balanced life, because sitting there and focusing on one thing all the time is a really difficult thing to do. You can't, like, doing 8 hours of expanding your spirituality a day, or, I mean, however many hours you're awake, call it 16 hours a day doing that'd be a very daunting task for any one of these categories. So if you do a little bit in each area or select areas, it creates a nice balance, so that life continues to progress in a very comfortable way. Another way of looking at it is just focusing in one area. And it's perfectly okay to do that as well. A lot of times you have an inspiration. I'm going to get the idea of the wheel. You get inspiration to go create something. Like my first business, Innovation Ads, when I created that business, I didn't really have time for relationships. I didn't have time to really go to the gym when I was first doing it, or I didn't even worry about what I ate. I sacrificed a lot in those areas to move forward in one specific area. And by having that focus on that business and that inspiration inside of me, I was okay with losing a little ground in other areas, because it felt so good to be pursuing this dream. So if you have something right now that's just like this is all I want to be doing, then do it. Then don't let anybody else stop you. Then that's an inspiration. I go with it. Go with your inspired belief that this is what you really want to be doing. If you don't have that one inspired item, then you might want to look at all different 5 areas. And I see a couple people just joined here, so I'm just going to show you the 5 areas that we're with. Just made this wheel here, and you have your relationships, your health, your financial, your personal development, and your spiritual aspects. And the idea here is you can rank them at what level they're at and try to get them all to an even keel level, so that when the wheel starts rolling, you have a nice balance in life, right? If this was on a car right now and it was only filled into where these areas are, it'd be a really bumpy ride. So that's one area. If you have one specific focus that just you are so inspired to do, then go and do it. And it will feel really, really, really good. And Matt, I see you just joined. This touches a little bit on the question that you sent in to me, but tomorrow I will go over that question specifically in how you actually choose. Because a lot of times what happens is we don't have just one opportunity at stake. We have so many different choices that we can actually make. And that's what happens every single moment of the day. We're making choices, right? And some of them we're on autopilot. We know this is what we do when this thing happens. Like light turns green, we know to hit the gas. Light turns red, we know we've got to slow down. But those are just kind of the things that we're programmed with. The reality is we have opportunities in our midst consistently. Sometimes they're disguised as the worst of problems, but they're all opportunities for us to make a decision and change course or accelerate where we're going. And what we got to do is get aligned with ourselves so that we can make those choices appropriately. So the first thing you want to do is assess where you are right now. So take a look of where you are in those areas, those 5 areas: your health, your relationships, spiritual, financial, and any kind of skill development, personal development. If you want to become a better speaker, if you want to learn neuro-linguistic programming, you want to learn another language, you want to be a better painter because that's what you do. Whatever the skill development is, those areas, make sure that you take some time and analyze where you are in each one of them, and maybe set a goal for your weakest of them. Unless, of course, you have one area that you like, I've got to fix this shit. I'm sick of being single and being miserable. And if that's where you're at, or I'm sick of where my relationship's at right now, I've got to make some changes so it's going to be better. It doesn't mean you get rid of the relationship. It means you have to assess that relationship and assess yourself and what your part is in that relationship. And I've been watching, my wife, for example, doing relationship coaching with people, and I'm watching people like make breakthroughs after a 45-minute call, that things they've been struggling with for years. So you might want to consider getting a relationship coach or reading a book on relationships before you toss your current relationship out, or before you try to get a new relationship in any way, because chances are you're going to be attracted to the same thing as you were before and end up in the same, similar, or worse situation, which happens a lot of times. So we have to change on the inside. So figure out what areas it is that you're weak in and start making moves on those areas. Unless, of course, you have one area that you are so inspired and you know, this is what I need to do, and you feel it. If you feel it, you know it. You know it if you feel it. So if you don't know it, then you don't feel it. So start working on a little bit on each area that's a little bit weaker, and you'll get that inspiration. And all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, wait a second. I've really got to just focus on this area because I'm getting this and I'm having fun doing it. I'm enjoying it. And it's like my life is just getting better by doing this. Because the truth is, any area that you focus on, what you learn in that area is going to be able to be applied to the other 4. So that's how I like to analyze myself, where I'm at right now, and where I am consistently. And I do this honestly on a weekly basis, and I look and say, hey, where am I at? I don't always draw the wheel out, but I do measure myself. Am I actually making progress? Am I making moves? And do I have a set outcome that I want to obtain? So these things help me with all my decisions, because I start becoming intuitive about things, and it's like almost like autopilot. Like when you're driving in the car and you get to a red light, you know you got to stop. Well, if you're continuously assessing yourself, it's just like coming to a red light where you automatically, like, there's a trigger, something you see, something that happens, and you say, oh, I know that when that happens, I need to do this. And you want everything to be second nature like that, and you want your decisions to be reinforced and strong. So, I'm still on my path in learning, and there's a lot left to learn. I'll be doing it till I die, but you want to start to automate these things that you can, as many things as possible, that you're always making the best decisions. The first step is really analyzing yourself and assessing your current situation. Now, tomorrow I will get into quite a bit about how to pick the right opportunity, how to decide on the outcome, because when we start getting inspiration, we usually get multiple ideas, and it's hard to pick which one to do. And sometimes it's clear as daylight, but sometimes it can be challenging. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what you can do and how you can read yourself, and through your own emotions and through your own intuition, foster that so you can make the right decisions for you. Again, you're a unique person. I'm not going to tell you which one to do. I'm going to tell you how to find out which one you really want to do, and how to analyze yourself to do that. So, yeah, tomorrow we'll talk about the different opportunities and different outcomes. And if you guys have real life scenarios, feel free to message me with those. I really appreciate you doing that, because then I'll give you exactly information that you want, and hopefully be able to give you the right questions to be asking yourself, so that you get the outcome and the answers that you're seeking. So Matt, definitely tune in tomorrow, because I'm going to get deeper on this, exactly what you asked. I was going that direction, actually. So good intuition there. Really enjoyed talking to you the other night, and I know there's probably several of you on here. It doesn't always show me who's joined, that I've talked to over the last couple days, and really appreciate you joining in and supporting and being here. Please share and love, send me messages, and thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow.